Hello, I'm Katie Wilson and you're watching A News. Here are your top stories. Israel says a ceasefire is expected to begin within 24 hours after its government ratifies a Gaza peace deal tonight. Ursula von der Leyen survives 2 votes of no confidence amid rising divisions in the European Parliament. And Putin says Russia is fully cooperating with Azerbaijan in the AZAL plane crash probe as he meets Aliyev in Tajikistan. Thank you for joining us. Israel and Hamas have signed the first phase of a US-brokered deal aimed at ending the conflict in Gaza. The agreement includes the release of all Israeli hostages and establishes a framework for a ceasefire, with international partners playing a key role in the negotiations. Let's take a closer look at what this means.
They have been
US President Donald Trump was handed a note by Secretary of State Marco Rubio during a meeting at the White House on Wednesday, moments before the president announced that a deal to end the war in Gaza was close.
The Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
And that announcement was that Israel and Hamas have signed off on the first phase of the US 20-point proposed Gaza peace deal. Trump said, "I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan." He added at the end, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Israel, in turn, will withdraw its forces to a mutually agreed upon line, though this doesn't constitute a full troop withdrawal. The so-called yellow line from President Trump's plan has been adjusted. Under the terms of the agreement, Israel is expected to withdraw troops to a pre-agreed line within 24 hours of formal government approval. According to the IDF, that redeployment will leave Israeli forces in control of 53% of Gaza's territory. The agreement, brokered with the involvement of the United States, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey, marks a significant diplomatic breakthrough. It remains unclear whether Hamas has agreed to fully disarm, and questions persist regarding who will govern Gaza following the implementation of the agreement. Israel seeks a durable ceasefire, guarantees for hostage safety and assurances that Hamas will be disarmed, while Gaza's reconstruction is monitored by international partners. Hamas, on the other hand, demands permanent ceasefire terms, complete Israeli troop withdrawal to agreed lines, unrestricted humanitarian access, the return of displaced residents, and reconstruction under a Palestinian technocratic body. While the agreement marks an historic step toward peace, its long-term success will hinge on both sides upholding their commitments and on sustained international support to guide Gaza's recovery.
Over now to Israel and Gaza, where there are rare scenes of joy on both sides. Israelis and Palestinians are celebrating what they hope will be the long-awaited end to the war.
طبعا الحمد لله على وقف إطلاق النار ووقف شلال الدماء.
Both Israelis and Palestinians poured into the streets on Thursday, clapping and cheering after Israel and Hamas agreed to the first phase of US President Donald Trump's 20-point plan to end the Gaza war. Indirect talks in Egypt brought the breakthrough just a day after the second anniversary of Hamas's cross-border attack that set off the conflict. The deal, announced late Wednesday, includes a ceasefire and hostage exchange. In Khan Yunis, crowds gathered clapping and cheering after experiencing 2 years of heartache and war.
These are moments that are considered historic moments, long awaited by Palestinian citizens after 2 years of killing and genocide that was committed with arrogance against the Palestinian people.
Thank God for the ceasefire, the end of bloodshed and killing. I am not the only one happy. All of the Gaza Strip is happy. All the Arab people, all of the world is happy with the ceasefire.
This is something joyful for us, and we thank our brothers and anyone who contributed, even if verbally, to stop the war and to stop the bloodshed.
Families of hostages living in Washington, D.C. spoke by phone with Trump on Thursday, who told them their loved ones would return on Monday.
Mr. President, we believe in you. We know you've done so much for us over the past, since you became a president, and even before that. And we trust you fulfill the mission until every hostage, every 48 of the hostages are home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
They're coming back. Thank you to the people of Israel, to the soldiers. Thank you to President Trump. Thank you to all who helped bring my son and the hostages back. We won't stop. We won't stop fighting till the last hostage. Matan is coming home.
Truly, the joy is deep, but we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic until they get into the Red Cross vehicle and truly meet the IDF soldiers. Until that moment, we must pray, cry out to the gates of heaven, truly do everything with God's help.
All over Gaza and Israel, there are sounds of celebration blended with quiet prayers, hopeful for a peace that would last beyond the night.
The Israeli Security Cabinet is now meeting in Jerusalem as we speak, a session that started later than planned, reportedly due to ongoing discussions over which Palestinian prisoners will be released as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal. The full cabinet is expected to meet later to formally ratify the agreement. Israeli officials say the ceasefire could begin within 24 hours once approved. We'll bring you the latest lines as they come. US President Donald Trump says all remaining hostages held by Hamas will be released early next week, calling it a step towards lasting peace in the Middle East. Speaking at a cabinet meeting, Trump said he plans to travel to the region, including Egypt, to mark the official signing of the ceasefire deal.
We are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there, and we're working on the timing, the exact timing. We're going to go to Egypt, where we'll have a signing, an additional signing. We've already had a signing representing me, but we're going to have an official signing.
Well, joining us to unpack the latest on this developing story is political analyst Nuno Varnans Martin from Lisbon in Portugal. Thank you for being with us. Now, how is the mood in Israel and in Gaza today?
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me. Well, the mood, as you can see, is very happy, is very cheer up. And we can imagine why. In the case in Israel, it's clearly that this was the goal from since day one, since the 8th of October, to bring back the hostages alive, or the bodies of those who perished in Gaza. And it's a huge victory. It's a sense of relief. It's a sense of especially for the families who haven't forgotten them, who have demonstrated in support of them, and also for the government who has this as goal number one. And it's a fantastic moment. In the case of Gaza, I do believe that the cheer is not only about the end of the conflict, but it's also about the future of the strip, which means that most probably, finally, that the Gaza residents, the Gaza Palestinians, they will be rid of Hamas, or at least of the Hamas who is violent, who will be militarized, who in this case will be demilitarized, and this is very important for peace in the region and for peace in people living in Gaza and the Israelis living side to side.
Now, we're talking about a ceasefire rather than a final peace agreement, aren't we? This is still the very early stages. And why is it important that we make that distinction?
We are talking about the ceasefire, that's correct. And I think that we are also talking about the peace agreement, which is the development of the ceasefire, which means that we have to be very cautious because this agreement, this 20-point plan by the Trump administration is basically step by step. And the first step, which is the most difficult because, as I said before, Hamas having the hostages, they have the tour de force in this competition, let's put it like this. And once they deliver the hostages, we have to go step by step and ceasefire with a peace plan. It's a peace plan which is not necessarily a peace plan between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It's a peace plan for Gaza. It's a peace plan for, as I said before, for the people who live in Gaza. And it's a peace plan for the Israelis who will be living side to side with the Gazans as well. It's important to distinction. I think that's not the most relevant thing. I think we can start it as a ceasefire that will implement a peace plan. That's my take.
Obviously, this ceasefire is yet to be implemented, but people in Gaza are still reporting explosions in the territory. We're just getting reports of that as we speak. What do you make of that?
Well, first and foremost, you have to consider that both sides still attacked a little bit, according to reports that I've seen. It's also that the Israeli government said that the implementation of the ceasefire will be from tomorrow on, and the hostages will be delivered, as President said.
Do we know why we're waiting that long? Why are we still waiting for that?
Because it's not easy. It's not easy first for the living because also again, according to some reports I've read and I've seen, the Hamas is putting some of the living hostages with the Red Cross, so they are preparing that to deliver them to the Red Cross, and it's also very difficult to get the bodies of those who already perished. So this is the first thing, and also most probably the reality of the tunnels within Gaza. We're talking about 5,000 tunnels. This is also creates some difficulties, and this is how we can also see why Hamas have survived 2 years despite the war.
Thank you for joining us on the programme on this significant day and for providing your insight.
Thank you so much.
Now to other news. The US government shutdown has entered its 9th day, and President Trump says most federal workers will eventually be compensated for missed wages. However, he also suggested that not everyone affected will be eligible, saying some people don't deserve support and will be taken care of differently. Trump once again blamed Democrats for the ongoing deadlock, while Congress remains at a standstill with no agreement in sight. Meanwhile, the Internal Revenue Service announced that more than 34,000 employees will be furloughed starting on the 8th of October, further impacting services across the country.
Well, we're going to see most of them are going to get back pay, and we're going to try and make sure of that. But some of them are being hurt very badly by the Democrats, and they therefore won't qualify. Democrats want to make it worse. The Democrats want to approve health care for illegals coming into our country, many of them coming in from prisons and mental institutions and drug dealers. They want to give them health care. We don't want that for our people because that's going to destroy the health care that we already have. We'd like to make Obamacare better for people, less expensive and better health care.
Well, the ongoing shutdown continues to affect communities across the United States. Charity organisations and food banks say they're preparing to address a potential increase in demand for assistance among affected families.
An Arizona charity that helps feed families in need says it expects demand for its services to rise as the US government shutdown continues. Thousands of federal workers were furloughed when the Republicans and Democrats weren't able to reach an agreement on its spending budget by the 1st of October. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul in Phoenix provides food, rental assistance and other support to the community.
anytime someone suddenly doesn't receive a paycheck that they're expecting for their house and their livelihood, it can really cause a lot of stress on themselves and their families, and it can cause a need for them to seek support from places like St. Vincent de Paul to get the food that they need to feed their families, to get help with rent, to get help with utilities. And we expect that we could see some increases with people in our community needing that help.
This week, volunteers and staff were making meals and collecting food and water donations. St. Vincent de Paul says it serves £7 million of food to the community each year.
It's always hard to know how much people need our help. But at the end of the day, because there's so many people willing to give back, it also, I think, still remains hopeful that we can be here for each other and we can be here to lend a hand.
Furloughed federal workers and essential federal employees will not receive paychecks until the shutdown ends. However, they are expected to receive back pay once an agreement is reached.
Just returning to our top story there to bring you some of the latest lines. Israel's Security Cabinet meeting has just ended. That's what an Israeli government source has told Reuters. That means Israeli government ministers are now meeting for a full cabinet meeting. The cabinet is expected to ratify the Gaza ceasefire deal with the aim of Israel's remaining hostages being released in the coming days. Now, back to the top stories of today. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has wrapped up his two-day visit to India, focusing on deepening trade and investment ties between London and New Delhi. On the final day, Starmer met with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi. Our correspondent Zainab Farajzadeh has more.
The second and final day of Keir Starmer's visit to India focused on strengthening trade and investment ties between London and New Delhi. In Mumbai, the British Prime Minister met his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi, with both leaders highlighting the potential of a new trade agreement signed earlier this year. The deal agreed to cut tariffs on goods from textiles to whiskey and cars and allow more market access for businesses in the world's fifth and sixth largest economies, aiming to boost two-way trade by a further £25.5 billion by 2040. Starmer's office says 64 Indian companies will invest a total of £1.3 billion in the UK, expecting to create new jobs and support growth in areas such as technology, energy and manufacturing. Britain also announced a £350 million contract to supply the Indian Army with lightweight multi-role missiles built in Northern Ireland, part of what London calls a growing strategic partnership with India. Meanwhile, 2 UK universities have been given approval to open new campuses in India. The move, it says, will help expand the UK's global influence without adding pressure to domestic migration figures. It comes at a time when the government is tightening rules around international students and has said more Indian visas weren't on the agenda for talks. Both sides also agreed to set up an India-UK connectivity and innovation centre and also a joint centre for artificial intelligence. A critical minerals industry guild to bolster supply chains and promote green technologies was also unveiled. The two leaders announced joint investment in a climate technology startup fund and set up new collaborations on health and renewable energy, an offshore wind task force and a health research partnership, among other projects. The visit, accompanied by the largest ever UK business delegation to India, is part of Starmer's wider push to strengthen Britain's global economic partnership. Zainab Farajzadeh, News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has comfortably survived 2 votes of no confidence. These latest motions of censure are the third attempt to unseat her within 3 months.
Vote is closed.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has survived 2 attempts to remove her from office after an overwhelming majority of EU lawmakers rejected no-confidence motions from hard right and left-wing groups on Thursday. The far-right Patriots for Europe, led by Jordan Bardella, accused von der Leyen of surrendering to Washington on trade, pursuing senseless enlargements and failing on migration policy. That motion was rejected, with 378 EU lawmakers voting against it and 179 in favour. A second motion of censure, proposed by the Parliament's hard-left group, criticised von der Leyen's handling of Latin American trade, the Green Deal and migration. It was rejected, with 383 EU lawmakers voting against it and 133 in favour. These latest motions come just under 3 months after the previous no-confidence vote in July, highlighting a fragmented parliament and fragile trust between the Commission and centrist parties. Von der Leyen accused her opponents of fuelling divisions instead of strengthening the union. A no-confidence vote is one of Parliament's strongest accountability tools, requiring a two-thirds majority to dismiss the Commission, a threshold never reached. Although the motions of censure had little chance of meeting that threshold, some lawmakers said they could expose broader unease over her leadership and risk destabilising the EU Assembly, whose backing is needed to pass legislation.
Hungarian writer Laszlo Krasznahorkai has been awarded the 2025 Nobel Prize in Literature. The Nobel Committee praised his compelling and visionary collection of work that explores apocalyptic terror while reaffirming the power of art. But all eyes will be on the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. Here's a look at how one of the world's most prestigious awards is actually decided.
The Nobel Peace Prize will be announced on Friday, chosen from 338 nominees worldwide. But how does the selection really work? It begins in Oslo with the Norwegian Nobel Committee, 5 people appointed by Norway's parliament. Each one is put forward by a political party, so the group roughly reflects the balance of power in Norwegian politics. Next comes the question of who can win. The committee follows Alfred Nobel's will from 1895, which says the award should go to whoever has done the most to promote peace, reduce conflict, and advance cooperation among nations.
Now, the more complicated answer is that needs to be placed in the current context. The committee operates with a dynamic understanding of the will for very good reasons. And there's no codification of exactly what is emphasized in the Nobel Committee's deliberations.
Thousands of people, including parliament members, heads of state, university professors, and past laureates.
The two largest categories of people with the right to nominate are firstly academics, and that would mean all professors and associate professors, even retired professors within all of the social sciences, theology, philosophy, law, and history. That's already quite a few people in the world that can nominate there. The second largest category is all members, all sitting members of national assemblies and governments anywhere in the world.
Nominations must be submitted by January 31st each year. From there, the committee creates a shortlist. Each candidate is reviewed by independent experts. The group meets about once a month and aims for consensus, but if members can't agree, they vote. While the names are secret, some nominators go public. Among those revealed this year are the International Criminal Court, NATO, Hong Kong activist Chow Hang-tung, and Canadian lawyer Irwin Cotler. And while leaders from several countries claim to have nominated US President Donald Trump, those submissions came too late to count. Experts say his current policies make a win unlikely. Instead, many expect the committee to honour humanitarian workers, journalists, or a United Nations body, though surprises are always possible. Finally, the winner receives a gold medal, a diploma, 11 million Swedish crowns, about $1.19 million, and global recognition overnight.
Reports are emerging from Afghanistan of new restrictions on several social media platforms just days after a major nationwide internet blackout. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more details from Kabul.
According to monitoring groups and users inside the country, access to sites like Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat has been heavily restricted, with filters reportedly applied to block certain kinds of content. While the full extent of the restriction is unclear, some users in Kabul told A News that videos on Facebook are no longer viewable and that Instagram has become almost completely inaccessible. These reports come barely a week after the country was plunged into a 48-hour communication blackout when both internet and telecom services were cut nationwide. That outage disrupted businesses, delayed flights, and even limited access to emergency services. It was met with relief and celebration when connections were finally restored. Cyber security organization NetBlocks says its data shows that Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat are now restricted across multiple internet providers in Afghanistan. So far, there has been no official statement from the government spokespersons explaining these latest restrictions or the reasons behind last week's nationwide blackout. However, after last month's shutdown in Balkh province, officials said internet access was blocked to stop what they called immoral content. For many Afghans, the growing control over online communication is raising new questions, not only about access to information, but about how much of their digital freedom remains. Tamim Bahis, Kabul, A News.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev and Russian President Vladimir Putin have met in Dushanbe. The talks, held ahead of the CIS summit, focused on the December AZAL plane crash, which strained ties between the two countries. Our very own Andy Mioch has more.
Hi from Dushanbe. Now, before we get to the summit of the Commonwealth of Independent States happening here in the Tajik capital on Friday, we've got some news for you from Azerbaijani-Russian relations that were strained ever since last December and the AZAL plane crash near Aktau in Kazakhstan. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin here in Dushanbe today for one-on-one talks, and the two spoke on the incident. Now, let's just remind you that Baku claims that the crash that killed 38 people was caused by Russian air defense missiles. Now, after we just cleared that up, here's what Putin said today. He again offered his condolences and said the plane was not targeted directly by the Russian Air Force, who had opened fire due to Ukrainian drones in Russian airspace. He went on to say the plane was likely hit by the shrapnel of missiles exploding near it. He underlined that he had earlier apologized to Ilham Aliyev when they held a phone conversation just after the crash. Putin said the investigation is still ongoing and will be finished soon. He added that the compensation will be paid and that, quote, a legal assessment will be given to the actions of all the officials involved. Now, this meeting came ahead of the CIS summit that's going to see Azerbaijan's Ilham Aliyev, Armenia's Nikol Pashinyan, Russia's Vladimir Putin, as well as presidents of Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan hold talks here at a gathering hosted by the Tajik president at the Palace of the Nation on Friday. From Dushanbe for A News, Elbrus Musaev and Andy Mioch.
Now, let's take a listen to what the two leaders had to say regarding the reasons leading to the tragic incident.
The investigation is nearing completion, and now, generally speaking, we can address the causes of this tragedy, this catastrophe. it was linked to several factors. The first is that a Ukrainian drone was present in the airspace. We were tracking 3 such drones that had crossed the border of the Russian Federation on the night of the tragedy. The second cause lies in technical malfunctions within Russia's air defense system itself. 2 missiles that were launched did not hit the aircraft directly. Had that happened, it would have crashed immediately, but instead exploded, perhaps through self-destruction, a few meters away, roughly 10 meters. Therefore, the damage occurred not primarily from combat fragments, but most likely from debris from the missiles themselves. This is why the pilot perceived it as a collision with a flock of birds, which he reported to Russian air traffic controllers, all of which is recorded in the so-called black boxes. He was also advised, and this too is clearly audible in the recordings, to land in Makhachkala, but he decided to return to his base airport and then to Kazakhstan. Nevertheless, the fact remains. I have now set out for you the reasons for the tragedy. All this is documented following a thorough analysis of the technical data and a second-by-second verification of the black box recordings. We have discussed this issue with you before. Of course, everything required in such tragic circumstances will be done by the Russian side in terms of compensation, and a legal assessment will be given regarding the actions of all responsible officials.
I would also like to thank you for personally keeping this situation under control. As we have repeatedly exchanged views, and as members of our respective teams remain in constant contact, you have been personally overseeing the progress of the investigation. We have never had any doubt that it would be conducted objectively and thoroughly. Therefore, I would once again like to express my gratitude that you considered it appropriate to address this matter at our meeting today. As you noted, not only our trade and economic relations, but cooperation in all other areas has been developing successfully this year. As you mentioned, the trade turnover has shown good momentum. Likewise, in all other directions, there has been no slowdown or regression. On the contrary, the roadmaps we approved together are being implemented successfully. The Russian-Azerbaijani Intergovernmental Commission also met relatively recently, where the co-chairs held detailed discussions on a wide range of issues, not only in trade and economic matters. And of course, today's meeting is another good opportunity to review our agenda once again.
Joining us now from Moscow to reflect on the meeting is political analyst Dmitry Brija. Thank you for being with us. Now, as we know, President Aliyev has long been calling on Russia to admit its guilt in the AZAL crash incident. What do you make of what Putin said today?
Good evening. I think it's important to show and to talk about the issue, the reasons of the airplane crash, because we see that because of that we had conflicts, different issues in the relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan, and we see that the president of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, is trying to express its feeling toward this tragedy, and also to give details to the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, about the incident, because of course this incident, let's say, made issues between Russia and Azerbaijan, and there were different tensions and, let's say, conflicts because of the airplane crash. And now this meeting is very important towards, let's say, establish better relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan.
And why do you think that is? Is that because this was Putin's first public admission of responsibility?
I think so, yeah, because before that, the Russian government didn't talk about this issue, and the Russian media tried to hide information about the incident. But now we see that the President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, is talking about the details of this event, and it also means that the Russian government will give a report to the Azerbaijani government about this crash and how it happened and what's the main issue of this crash.
So can we confidently say that today marks a reset in Baku-Moscow relations, or is it too early to say that?
I think it's not early. It means that the relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan will be as it was before, because this issue, this problem, let's say, had a negative impact on the Russian-Azerbaijani relationship. And even in the region, there were different issues because we see also the agreement that were signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So the Russian government also had let's say, negative, impact because of this agreement. They were thinking that because of this event, the United States of America will get benefits in the region. So it shows, this meeting, that the Russian-Azerbaijan relationship will be strong and will be as it was several years ago, because Russia understands very well that the Caucasian region is very important strategically, and it's also important for foreign policies of Russian Federation.
So just to go over what President Putin said, he said the first factor is that a Ukrainian drone was present in the airspace. We were tracking 3 drones that had crossed into the Russian Federation territory overnight on the day of the tragedy. And the second reason involves technical malfunctions in Russia's air defense system itself. So what do you make of those 2 reasons?
I think it shows that the Russian Federation is trying to explain the issue, because, as I said before, the Russian authorities didn't say any details about the event, and even Russian media didn't talk about this event. So after we had, let's say, a conflict between Russia and Azerbaijan in the especially between diplomats and on the diplomatic level. But as we see right now, the Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to stabilize the relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan, because it's very important for Russia to keep this relationship with Azerbaijan and to develop it.
And what about that reason of the Ukrainian drone? What more do we know about this?
Well, it's still we don't have enough information. I think that the Russian media and the Russian authorities will give a full report about this event and about the Ukrainian drone. Of course, we know that Ukrainian drones are attacking daily Russian Federation in different regions, especially in the north of Caucasia. So I think it's the main issue of this airplane crash, and I think the Russian authorities need to work better on these issues in order not to repeat it again.
Thank you very much for joining us on the programme and for providing your insight there. Now, Georgia's Defence Minister is in Ankara for a key defence ministerial alongside his Turkish and Azerbaijani counterparts. The meeting comes amid growing regional security challenges, from the shifting dynamics in the South Caucasus to Georgia's evolving foreign policy. Our correspondent Nini Nikolaishvili has more on this visit and its wider significance.
The Azerbaijan-Turkey-Georgia trilateral defense meeting in Ankara brings together the 3 nations' defense chiefs, Zakir Hasanov, Yasar Guler and Irakli Chikovani, to discuss strategic partnerships, regional defense planning and joint security initiatives. According to Georgia's Ministry of Defense, the ministers will also hold bilateral talks and sign a joint declaration aimed at strengthening cooperation and regional stability. This defense format, launched in 2012, has become one of the most important regional security mechanisms in the South Caucasus. Last year's meeting in Baku emphasized military training and intelligence sharing, while earlier sessions in Batumi and Kars focused on border defense and counter-terrorism coordination. But this year's summit carries particular diplomatic weight for Georgia. The implications are twofold. On one hand, closer defense coordination with Turkey and Azerbaijan strengthens its security resilience at a time of growing uncertainty in relations with some Western partners. On the other hand, it positions Tbilisi as a bridge in an evolving regional security order where pragmatic cooperation may carry as much weight as formal alliances. Diplomats note that these meetings also send a quiet message to larger powers that regional actors can manage their own security architecture without external mediation. In this sense, today's trilateral is less about symbolic unity and more about strategic continuity, keeping regional dialogue alive as the South Caucasus adjusts to new diplomatic realities. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan attended the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels and shared his country's vision for cooperation. He touched on issues including regional connectivity, peace, and new cooperation initiatives with the European Union.
The forum, which is underway in Brussels, focuses discussions on advancing regional and global connectivity and spotlighting new avenues for cooperation. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan was part of the speakers at the event, where some aspects of his speech touched on elements involving Azerbaijan and Europe. Pashinyan highlighted the recent peace deal with Baku and ongoing normalization process with Turkey, linking it to the broader peace efforts in the region.
I'm happy to report that today, with peace established between Armenia and Azerbaijan and positive dynamics in Armenia-Turkey normalization, our very idea of crossroads of peace is being realized, having full potential to change the whole dynamics not only in the South Caucasus, but also far beyond.
Logistics and communications issues were also among the key topics discussed at the Brussels Forum. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan drew attention to the TRIP initiative, describing it as a potential driver for transport and energy cooperation across the wider region.
The Trump route for international peace and prosperity, also known as TRIP route, is a promising investment project that entails a plethora of opportunities for the cooperation from railroads to energy.
He also underlined that Armenia's ties with the European Union have reached an unprecedented level, paving the way for deeper cooperation under Europe's new connectivity agenda.
The relations between Armenia and the European Union have never been closer. This growing partnership creates unique opportunities for anchoring Armenia more deeply and strategically into Europe's evolving connectivity vision, such as the Global Gateway, the Black Sea Strategy, the Middle Corridor, Trans-European Transport Network, and more.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also addressed the forum, highlighting Europe's approach to partnerships based on common interests.
Partnerships based on common interests and respect for sovereignty. And that is what unites us here today. That is Europe's approach. Like you, we recognize that our strength relies on diversifying our relationships. And that's why we are expanding our network of free trade agreements. Thank you very much for
the Global Gateway Forum focuses also on other advancing global connectivity in the face of geopolitical and geo-economic challenges.
Baku is set to host a meeting next week between Azerbaijan, Iran and Russia. Leaders will discuss the development of the international north-south transport corridor, focusing on boosting traffic flows, streamlining procedures and enhancing energy cooperation. Our correspondent Taraz Shiralilu reports.
The International North-South Transport Corridor is a 7,200-kilometer long route consisting of road, rail and sea, and it moves freight between Azerbaijan, Central Asia, Europe, India, Iran and Russia. It therefore increases connectivity between Mumbai, Bandar Abbas, Bandar Anzali, Baku, Astrakhan and Moscow. On Monday, a two-day meeting in Baku will bring together Azerbaijani, Iranian and Russian representatives to exchange views on projects relating to the completing of the corridor, according to the director at the Iranian Ministry of Road and Urban Development. Amin Tarafo says the meeting will discuss increasing transport capacity, how to accelerate the movement of trucks, and simplify and streamline customs procedures. He also mentioned that the delegates will discuss the energy corridor to connect their country's energy networks. Local news media in Azerbaijan, quoting Cabinet of Ministers, said the talks will focus on strengthening cooperation in the fields of transport, logistics, energy and customs. The delegations will be led by Deputy Prime Minister of Azerbaijan, Shahin Mustafayev, Iranian Minister of Transport and Urban Development, Farzaneh Sadegh, and Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Alexei Overchuk. Iran's Sadegh and Azerbaijan's Mustafayev last met in Tehran in September. They co-chair the Azerbaijan-Iran Joint Economic Cooperation Commission. The Iranian President, Masoud Pezeshkian, said that Tehran is interested in expanding its relations with Baku in all political, economic and cultural fields. He made the comment during a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of Azerbaijan last month. President Pezeshkian also came to Baku on a state visit back in April, where Mustafayev said that President Aliyev had asked him to emphasize on the agenda the serious and diligent implementation of agreements that were reached during the visit. Taraz Shiralilu in Tehran, A-News TV.
Officials and experts from several countries have met to discuss ways to resolve cases of people missing in conflicts. Azerbaijan, which still lists nearly 4,000 citizens as missing from the Karabakh War, is hosting the conference.
The international event in Baku brings together officials, experts and families affected by conflicts to address the growing global crisis of missing persons. Ali Nagiev, chairman of Azerbaijan's State Commission on Prisoners of War, Hostages and Missing Persons, highlighted the country's ongoing efforts to resolve cases of missing citizens from both the First Karabakh War and the 2020 conflict, noting that nearly 4,000 individuals, including women and children, remain unaccounted for.
After the liberation of those areas, 29 mass graves were discovered. According to expert examinations, it was immediately determined that the individuals had been subjected to torture. This is a very grave situation. The killing, inhumane burial, and concealment of people in this manner constitute a serious violation of international law. Clarifying the fate of persons who went missing during the Karabakh conflict has always been one of the most important tasks before us.
By comparison, the United Nations reports that more than 57,000 people went missing in conflict zones worldwide in 2024 alone, placing Azerbaijan's efforts in a broader global context. In a message to participants, President Ilham Aliyev called the issue of missing persons one of humanity's most urgent challenges and urged stronger international cooperation. Searches continue, but experts say the lack of reliable information remains a major hurdle to success.
The main problem in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, we had 33 33,000 missing persons in our country. We have been able to find 26,000 until now, but we are still searching for 7,600 around that number. That's a large number 30 years after war. But and the main issue we have is the lack of information where the mass graves are. So people that know the information won't tell. That's the main issue. The other issue is technical support also that we do not have in our country.
Speakers at the forum said the aim was to build cooperation and share practical experience between countries that have faced the same tragedy.
Even during my speech, I was mentioning about the fact that it's so important to have a dialogue and it's so important to be able to cooperate. So this event, the main important aim is to put people together, to discuss the same topic and to share their experiences and to be able to implement this experience in their countries.
Among those attending were relatives of missing persons who described years of uncertainty and waiting for answers.
My husband is one of the 4,000 missing persons. We have been waiting for him for many years. His 2 children, as well as his brothers and sisters, are still waiting with hope in their hearts. We only believe he will return alive. God willing, he will come back and reunite with our family. It is an extremely difficult situation because a person cannot simply disappear. Hope is the last thing to die, and we are not hopeless.
As searches continue worldwide, participants in Baku are calling for stronger international mechanisms to trace missing individuals and prevent future disappearances.
Now, Azerbaijan's sovereign wealth fund SOFAZ said it will invest £50 million in London's Gatwick Airport, one of the largest infrastructure deals the fund has pursued in Europe.
The State Oil Fund of Azerbaijan has partnered with US-based Global Infrastructure Partners, a part of BlackRock, to invest £50 million in London Gatwick Airport. The transaction represents one of the largest single infrastructure deals undertaken by SOFAZ in the European market, underscoring the fund's long-term commitment to global infrastructure and sustainable growth. This investment reflects SOFAZ's strategic objective of generating long-term value and further diversifying its portfolio by investing in resilient infrastructure assets in developed markets. Gatwick is the UK's second busiest airport, serving more than 40 million passengers annually. In 2024, it ranked as the 10th busiest airport in Europe by total passenger traffic. Gatwick is a vital part of the UK's national infrastructure, supporting over 23,000 jobs on site and contributing billions annually to the British economy.
Rivers in the Caucasus are drying up, caught between climate change, regional power plays and rising demand. Our next report explores how the Kura and Aras rivers are becoming a source of growing tension and uncertainty.
Rivers, the pulsing arteries of our planet. Like an intricate spiderweb, they span the Earth's surface, providing people with vital life-giving resources. Rivers know no borders. They flow across countries, drawing lines that can symbolize friendship, security, or even conflict. They connect people, yet can also divide communities. Transboundary rivers, in particular, play a crucial role in shaping cultural, economic and political relations between nations. In the Caucasus, a mountainous region paced with lakes and rivers, the flow of water either builds bridges between diverse communities or floods ongoing efforts toward unity. The Kura, the largest transboundary river in the Caucasus, flows mostly through Georgia and Azerbaijan before reaching the Caspian Sea. Both countries heavily depend on it for vital water resources. Only a small stretch of the Kura River passes through Turkey. But recent data from 2020 to 2025 shows a troubling decline in the flow of both Kura and Aras rivers, especially compared to the 2010s. Climate change is a key driver with rising temperatures and falling rainfall. But human activity is also to blame. Overuse of water, irrigation and dam construction are reducing flow levels. Turkey, where both rivers originate, has a major influence on declining water levels. It operates 2 hydroelectric plants on the Kura River and 6 on the Aras, with more planned. Though these plants generate only a small share of Turkey's electricity today, their future expansion could further reduce water reaching downstream countries, especially Azerbaijan. We've already seen consequences elsewhere. Turkey's dams on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers have already reduced water supplies to Iraq and Syria. Water, in this context, is more than just a resource. It becomes a tool of influence and control. Azerbaijan ratified the Water Convention in 2000, which aims to prevent conflict over shared rivers, but Turkey and Georgia have not. Without shared legal commitments, cooperation over the Kura River remains fragile, and the risks to people, ecosystems, and regional stability continue to grow.
That's all we have for now. From all of us here in the studio, thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.